Senator Harry Reid on the record calling the individuals who are supporting Cliven Bundy and his fight with the government as domestic terrorists. Senator Roy Blunt, that is your esteemed colleague from Nevada. Why do you guys, by the way, have to, when you guys do things on the floor of the Senate, you always do, my esteemed colleague from...
That's right. There's the famous statement somebody supposedly once made, I hold my colleague in the lowest possible high regard. With Harry, this is the same Harry Reid that just a couple of weeks ago said all these stories that me and other people are going to the floor and telling from our constituents about Obamacare are lies. Now, I verify all of them, so he's actually not calling me a liar. He's calling every Missourian, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them that contact our office about how this no longer meets. So there's all lies. They're all lies. Right. These people that are opposed to the way that the government's handling that situation are domestic terrorists. Harry Reid, at some point, we should probably just stop talking about anything Harry Reid says.
Well, because, here's what the thing is, as Republicans, as conservatives, I was making this case earlier, that, between Obama taunting the GOP yesterday and saying that, they just can't get over the fact that Obamacare has passed and they're in a state of denial, and Harry Reid taunting just average Americans, I say that conservatives need to come up, like you just pointed out, these real stories. Let's stop handicapping the races and let's start bringing people forward who actually are suffering in reality thanks to the liberal theocracy out there. And I think we can make some headway in terms of convincing individuals that common sense conservatives are the way to freedom and prosperity in this country.
Well, I do too, and I think the president's health care plan may be the generational touchstone of what happens when the government tries to do things that people can better do for themselves. What the government could do is help create a bigger marketplace and more choices. But what the government shouldn't do is to try to make those decisions for people. And this is the founder of the Republican Party, the first presidential candidate that won, Abraham Lincoln, said, when he was trying to explain this new political party, he said that government should do for people only those things that people cannot better do for themselves. And this was a speech in New York in 1860. It still should be fundamentally where we go. And if anything ever proved that, it's the president's health care plan. Standing right here in this spot, my heel marks may still be in the floor digging in on this. I've said we can't let this health care takeover by the government, but we can't let it be judged by whether the website works or not, because that's the website's eventually going to work. We can't even let it be judged by how many people sign up. So I'm trying not to spend a lot of time arguing about whether the numbers are real or fake. What really matters is, do people have access to insurance at more affordable levels that meets the needs of their family? That's clearly no, just like the answer to the question, you can keep your insurance and if you like it, you can keep your doctor if you like it. In virtually every state in America, there are thousands of people that no longer can keep their doctor, that no longer have their insurance policy, and are paying more premiums for higher deductibles. And these deductibles for many families in our state are just, from their point of view, it's like not having insurance at all.
And these are hearts and minds out there. And I think now we have an opportunity when we head into election time to tell the stories of real Americans. I don't need to know the story of the candidate. I'd like to know the story of what the candidate's going to do for the stories that are being told by real Americans. Yeah. Because here we have a situation where President Obama, they cannot supply the people crying tears of joy over Obamacare.
They cannot.
Civilians can talk about it. They haven't trotted out one person crying tears of joy. They haven't trotted out the person who mailed, allegedly, Obama and said, I didn't vote for you, but I'm really happy with Obamacare. They haven't been able to put any real people forth.
And I would say we also shouldn't let that be the standard. Surely there's one person out there that's better off, but there are thousands that aren't. And since October, I've been going to the Senate floor every week and reading just some of those stories that we get from Missourians every week. And you can go to my website and look at the last one, if not all of them. You may be able to link up to more than one of them. But every week there are these horror stories that families understand that they're dramatically affected in a negative way by the direction the government has forced health care in the country.
All right, Senator Blunt, hang around. We're going to take you along for the lightning round ride. How does that sound?
Lightning round. If you're in the Senate, anything that happens quick sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
That's exactly what we're going to do, buddy. That's exactly what we're going to do.
Lightning round.
Stock market is booming.
FM News Talk 97.1 is your source for the business and financial information you want. Starting weekdays with the Wall Street Journal this morning.
Looking at the stock market reaction.
Wall Street Journal market updates 3 times daily, and the Cavuto Money Report mornings and afternoons.
Oil prices falling.
Up to the minute market news when you want it at 971talk.com. When it comes to business coverage, it's all about you and your money. Count on FM News Talk 97.1.
The Lightning Round, brought to you by Hair Saloon for Men. Built on the belief that men deserve better. Experience a perfect haircut and relaxing shampoo without leaving the comfort of your authentic barber chair. Visit hairsaloon.com to find a location near you.
You're listening to Allman in the Morning. Common Sense Radio.
Yes, my friends.
Good morning, you bunch of drunks.
And good morning to all of you.
It's time for the lightning round.
That's right, with special guest star, Senator Roy Blunt in the studio with us. How are you, my friend?
Hey, lightning fast.
The lightning round.
Lightning round.
All right, so let me run this by you, though, really quickly, because I'm seeing this picture of an airplane on the tarmac in Tehran, Iran. And it's a private jet owned by a bank in Utah, they've traced it to, but with an American flag on it. Nobody knows who was in that airplane. The Bank of Utah says they weren't doing business there. But the bottom line is it's an American airplane sitting on the tarmac in Tehran when Obama has said Iran is not open for business. What's going on here?
Well, no matter what the president said, Iran was immediately open for business the minute we said that we were going to negotiate, which meant while the sanctions were in place, every country in Europe people began to go there. The Iranian currency, the rial, was at its lowest point, I suppose, ever. And they're all there trying to invest while they can invest with cheap money, because it's clear that the United States has given up on a policy that was working. We had Iran on the ropes. The president let them off the ropes. And that's why this negotiation's going nowhere. And why I've said we should have additional sanctions, as have a whole lot of my colleagues. But Senator Reid won't let that bill come to the floor in the Senate.
It's my understanding the Commerce Department would have had to have granted clearance for this to happen.
I don't know about that,
yeah,
but I do know that you're probably lucky if you can find a place to park in the Tehran airport with a private jet, because literally the hotels are full, mostly with Europeans who are investing in that country and helping bring the economy back, because the message was clear that the sanctions which were working are not going to get tougher and are probably over as far as these European countries are concerned, and apparently at least somebody from the United States in that plane.
Yeah, so they're partying like it's 1999 there in Tehran. The Europeans are. Interesting. 61% of Americans, according to a recent poll, believe that President Obama lies. Sometimes he's very deft at his pedantic antics. Yesterday was no exception when he declared that you Republicans, Senator Blunt, had plenty of opportunities to correct.
I don't think there's been any hesitation on our part to consider ideas that would actually improve the legislation.
Well, now, obviously, he's listened to some people because he's delayed Obamacare 27 plus times. But he's insinuating somehow that he was listening to you before Obamacare passed, and that just was not the case.
Wasn't listening before it passed, hasn't listened since. If the president really wanted to open the door to talk about corrections, he wouldn't have done these 20 and maybe 30 changes to Obamacare on his own that should have been done by the Congress. He could have said, here are 20 things you need to change. And by the way, suddenly the door is open and you can talk about the other things you do to give people better access to the policies they want. Remember, if you like your doctor, you can keep it, period. If you like your health care, your insurance, you can keep it, period. Not true, period. And an awful lot of what the president says about this isn't true. Amazingly, there are no figures available on anything they don't want to talk about. There are all kinds of figures available at any moment. There's something they do want to talk about.
Interesting. Yeah, and in the same little speech, he also taunted the GOP. Here's his taunt.
Their party has gone through, the stages of grief, right? And anger and denial and all that stuff, and we're not at acceptance yet.
Yeah, so he's treating it like you guys are just whining about it when you're hearing from constituents, as you pointed out earlier, every day. I'm hearing from people on the phone every day.
Right. Well, stages of grief for the American people and families. They're going to see more people who have been getting insurance at work have that insurance eliminated this year, even from companies who aren't covered by the law, companies with fewer than 50 people, because the message is clear to employers that this is going to get more and more onerous, more and more penalties, more and more government deciding what you can afford to offer as an employer. And if you don't have to do this, they're going to be bailing out. And I have hundreds of those examples too around our state of people that either January 1 of this year, or they told their employees in the last few months, January 1 of next year, we've done this for decades, but you're going to be on the exchange. So begin to think about how you're going to adjust to that. Some employers giving a little extra pay for part of that, some not. All kinds of retirement plans. IBM, big companies say our retirees are no longer covered by our plan. They're on the exchange, which I guarantee is not as good as their plan. Or UPS, another big company. Everybody likes the UPS person when they come by, but their spouses and families are no longer covered by the UPS policy. They're all on the exchange. So of course you're going to have people that look to the exchange as their only option for insurance, but they had a much better option for insurance before the health care plan went into effect.
You just told several personal stories, personal anecdotes. It's interesting as a tactic that President Obama chose to not address any of those and is trying to make this out to be the GOP and you guys are just the nattering nabobs of negativism.
Well, and there's no ongoing sense of contrition on his part for what he led people to believe that he had to know wasn't true. No understanding, it appears to me, of people who had a $500 deductible or no deductible. A $500 deductible, you can pay. A $3,000 deductible, most families can't. Some of the people that contact our office now have $7,000 deductibles for every member in the family. If you got four of you, that's $8,000 if everybody happened to get sick that year before any thing is paid for except maybe your annual physical. And by the way, on these annual physicals, if you go, some doctors are saying that they have to charge you if you actually go for the physical and turn out to have had a health care problem. If you don't get a clean bill of health, it's not a free physical in many of these insurance policies that are out there today. So very little is paid for. Barnes Jewish Hospital announced a new policy on dealing with care with people that don't have insurance, or with people that have insurance with high deductibles, because the fastest growing category of unpaid hospital bills are people with insurance.
It sounds to me like
people with insurance that have deductibles,
right,
they no longer can pay.
Well, it sounds to me like you get it as a conservative because you are choosing to not just run against the likes of Obama and his sycophants, but for the American people. And that's, I think, what conservatives need to do as we head into 2014, 2016, is start talking about real people. And you can talk all you want about Obama, but the reality is there are other problems out there, and it's not helping the GOP just by targeting a certain politician, but it should help the GOP by simply representing the people. I think you're onto that.
Talk about real people and talk about the constitutional conservative principles of federalism, where there are a few things that only the federal government can do, like defend the country. But as I told the Missouri General Assembly when I spoke to them a year ago, and probably will tell them again when I speak to them next week, you should vigorously fight anytime the federal government is taking over something that you know can be better done in Jefferson City. You should also be fighting when somebody in this body is proposing that you take over something that would be better left to cities or counties or families. This system works best when everybody doesn't try to do everything, and when what you decide to do, you try to do in the most effective, efficient, taxpayer understanding way to do it at the levels of government that work. That's what our party should be for. That's what the Constitution is for. That's a message I think Americans understand, and they're being killed by rules and regulations. And contradictory, and from maybe the city, the county, the state government, and some federal regulator all has a regulation out there that make it impossible to build a sidewalk in front of your house.
Yeah, we need to talk. You need to talk more about this, and you have been doing that. And that kind of message needs to be made clear, because heaven knows the media will not be there to help us.
I think if you look back at 2012 and the series of interviews the sitting president of the United States gave, probably the toughest interview he had was with Jon Stewart.
Yeah, a comedian. So you're not getting any help from NBC or CBS. So the more you, Senator Roy Blunt, can talk,
and that was that was the president's spokesman saying the toughest interview he had was with a comedian.
Yeah, right.
What does that say about the media?
Oh, I
right?
know. And they ought to be actually insulted by that, and maybe it'll change the way they approach things. You are headed to Fort Leonard Wood?
Fort Leonard Wood. I'm on the Armed Services Committee and also on the Defense Appropriating Committee, and these are important times to figure out how we defend the country in the best possible way with the best possible equipment, but at a cost that the government's willing to bear and taxpayers can be part of, and still have an economy that works.
Good for you. Always good to have you in the studio with us. Godspeed to you, and we can follow you on Twitter and at your website as well. And so thank you very much for all you do.
Good to see you all.
Senator Roy Blunt.